Hi, this is Knit Tips, Picot Edition. I'm Zandy from So I Make Stuff, and today we're learning the Picot Bind Off with beads. This is an example of the Picot Bind Off with beads. Now, for this beaded Picot, I have added the beads using a crochet hook. They are not pre-strung. So you can see here that we have 1, 2, 3 of the short ones and a tall one, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But mostly what we're going to be focusing on is this configuration, and you can see there's a bead, and over it, centered over it, is a picot. So let's get started. I've already cast on and knit 10 rows, so go ahead and do that. I started with 17 stitches. You're going to need a multiple of 4 plus 1. So that's 16 plus 1. And that will give you 4 picots that are centered in your piece. And I have actually decided to do, it's going to be 2 stitches on either side and then 3 stitches between each picot in the middle. You're also going to need a crochet hook and some beads. Now, I'm using worsted weight yarn, so I have a slightly larger crochet hook than is traditional for beaded lace or beaded shawls. And I'm using plastic pony beads just because they're visible. The main thing that you have to make sure of is you're going to need to make sure that you can fit a bead all the way over your hook so that you can slide it onto the yarn, and that your hook is big enough to grab onto the yarn so that you can slide the bead on. Okay, let's get started. To begin, I'm simply going to knit a stitch, and then I'm going to knit another stitch and bind one off. Then I'm going to bind off one more, knit one, pass one over to bind off. Now I'm going to slip this stitch back onto the left needle so that I can work the picot. And I have my crochet hook ready with a bead threaded on. And I'm going to do something called knitting on. This is a cast on method, or a method of increasing stitches. So I'm going to put the needle through the next stitch as if to knit, wrap the yarn, pull it through, but don't slip the yarn off the left-hand needle. Now I'm going to take this new loop and put it on the tip of the left-hand needle and pull it tight. And I'm going to repeat this once more. Knit a stitch, pull it through, don't pull it off the left-hand needle, put the new loop back onto the left-hand needle. Okay, so we have cast on 2 stitches and we're ready to go over the top of our picot. I'm going to knit the next stitch normally. I'm going to knit the second stitch and then pass the first over to bind one off. Now I'm going to take this needle, put it in my left hand so that I don't drop the needle out of that stitch, and I'm going to take my crochet hook. At this point, I'm going to grab onto this stitch, take it off the needle, and just slide that bead down onto the stitch, and then put the stitch back onto the left-hand needle. That's how you add a bead. Now I'm going to bring this back over and resume working my picot. I'm going to knit into this stitch, and it will be a little tight because that bead's on there, and pass one over. And now you can see the picot has been formed, but we need to continue on. And then I'm going to bind off 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to show you again a little bit faster this time. First thing I'm going to do is get my crochet hook ready with a bead so that it's already there. And then I'm going to start my picot. The first thing that we do is slip the stitch back to the left-hand needle. Then I'm going to knit on 2. 1, 2. Now I'm going to knit 1, bind 1 off, hold on to that needle with my left hand, take my crochet hook, grab the stitch on the left hand needle, the next stitch, slip a bead on, put it back, take out my hook, and continue to bind off. And then bind off 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, at this point, I don't really need to show you another one of these plain picots, but I would like to show you how to do the tall one. So to do that, I'm going to get 3 beads ready on my needle. Whoa. 1, 1, 2, 3. Oops. It's a little tricky, just a little. And I'm going to get ready for the next stitch. Now, let's just take a second here and look at this. So when I'm deciding that I want to make a longer picot, what I have to keep in mind is that in a short one, you have a bead and a no bead, that's 2 stitches knit on. In the taller one, you have a bead, a no bead, a bead, a no bead, and a bead and a no bead. That's 6 knit on. And if you want to make it only 2 beads, that's 4. If you want to make it taller, just multiply the number of beads times 2. Okay? Great. So we're doing 3 beads, so we're going to slip this back and then knit on 6. 1, 2. I tend to knit on pretty tight, so for me, it's something that I really have to watch. One more. Okay, that makes 6. So same as before, we're going to knit the first one normally, bind off the next one, then I'm going to take the next stitch, slip on a bead, place it back on the needle, and bind it off. Bind off the next one, plain. Put a bead. And when you knit on tightly like I do, it can be a little tricky to get that back on the needle. Bind off. Bind off another. And our last bead. Bind this off. And continue to bind off 1, 2, 3, 4. This stitch would be my last picot. You can see that would make 4 picots for 17 stitches, but what we really want to see is what this looks like. So you can see our 2 short ones, a long one. I think that the long one is pretty cool looking and would make an excellent border on some sort of shawl or scarf instead of fringe maybe. And I'll probably be trying that soon. So let's bring back our nice blocked and finished swatch. Now you know how to make the picot with a bead, and you'll see here, I'm going to bring this in. This is actually the other option that I've presented to you in my video tutorials. So this is the option with pre-strung and pre-knit beads, okay? And this is the one where you use the crochet hook to add beads as you go. Now, I don't really like using the crochet hook to add beads because I don't have one of those tiny little beading crochet hooks, and I tend to have trouble where I lose stitches while I'm trying to get the beads on the hook. I prefer to pre-string my beads and then add them in the row previous. So I prefer this method, but you can see they look almost identical. And so you get to choose. Please check out the other video for this method and let me know what you think. I will see you online. Thanks for watching. Bye.